1862, the U.S. began the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad over the Sierras and onto the interior plains. Over the next 7 years, two companies would race toward each other from Sacramento, California on one side and Omaha, Nebraska on the other. Each company would receive 6,400 acres of land, later doubled to 12,800, and $48,000 in government bonds for every mile of track built. On April 9, 1869, Congress established the meeting point in an area known as Promontory Summit, north of the Great Salt Lake. Less than 1 month later, on May 10, 1869, trains from the two railroads met nose to signal the joining of the two lines. At 12:57 p.m. local time, as railroad dignitaries hammered in the ceremonial golden spikes, telegraphers announced the completion of the Pacific Railway. It was met with a cheering crowd and playing band while cannons boomed in San Francisco and Washington. People felt as if the nation was finally united and manifest destiny became a reality. In 1876, the train officially went cross-country. The first engine used in the railroad was purchased from George Stephenson in England. Stephenson became known as the father of the tracks. In 1872 to 1973, a major stockholder in the Union Pacific Railroad called Malai Burr gave contracts to build their railroad.
The construction of the Transcontinental Railroad made transportation more enjoyable and accessible. Before the railroad, it took 6 months and over $1,000 to travel between California and New York, either by carriage or sea travel. After completing it, it costed $150 and only took a week to travel across country. A marked production boom occurred as resources had faster transport to industrial settings, thus speeding up the process of making goods. Faster transcontinental travel allowed businesses growth through expanding markets and cheaper distribution, as well as increased possibilities for partnerships and exchange of ideas. This movement between coasts allowed for business professionals to have a more expansive idea of their industry and allowed improved access to information and skills. Within 10 years, the railroad made $50 million in profits.
In the construction of the railroad, the peak employment numbers were about 10,000. The Central Pacific workers were mostly Chinese immigrants. About 2/3 of the total workers were Chinese, totaling about 23,000. Union Pacific officers, however, were Irish immigrants, former African American slaves, and Civil War veterans. Foremen claim that the workmen are kept promptly supplied with provisions, tools, horses, carts, powder, and all the necessary material for carrying on the work efficiently. What they didn't mention was that working on the mountain areas were extremely dangerous and many workers died while laying the tracks. Over 1,000 Chinese laborers died. A quote from a foreman says, "The laborers on the Summit Tunnel were mostly Chinese. They worked in groups of 3, working 8-hour shifts every day. They worked during one of the most severe winter storms known to California. When work got too severe, the need for building camps came about so that the workers had a place to rest. In the mountainous regions, the camps had to be weather resistant so that it had the strength to withstand the brutal snowstorms." During the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, living conditions for the laborers were harsh. Most lived in bunk cars or tents, sometimes more than 5 people per tent. The Chinese ate fish and drank tea, while the Irish ate bread and drank beer and black coffee. Diseases such as chickenpox spread because of their proximity. Also because they worked in extreme weather conditions, they were frequently injured or killed. The workers often hid injuries from their foremen in order to keep their jobs.